by themselves, they have certain inherent limitations. One is they don't have a source of revenue, right? These organizations mostly depend on foundation grants to survive. A few of them do have a dues structure, but these are extremely low-wage workers who cannot afford to pay substantial dues. So that's one problem. There isn't really a business model for most of these groups that allows them to sustain themselves, and they spend a lot of time raising money instead of organizing, because that's obviously a requirement to stay in business. Just a side point, many of these groups are headed by young women. It's not, and I see a lot of young women in the audience here. It's not an accident. In contrast, look at the staffers of most major unions.
And women of color. I just want to add, and a lot of women of color in particular.
A lot of women of color in particular. Yeah. So, they don't get paid a whole lot. This is a labor of love. So anyway, that's one problem, is the business model. Another is scale, which we've already talked about a little bit. It's with limited resources.
Yeah.
Let me just put it this way. When these groups began to appear in large numbers in the 1990s, the traditional labor unions looked at them with great skepticism. It was like, who are these kids? They don't have any money. They don't know anything. What are they doing here? What is this? They just thought it was a joke. Really, that was the view. And similarly, the worker center leaders, what now called alt labor, kind of looked at the unions themselves as dinosaurs. Like, they're not doing anything about the fissured workplace, about low-wage workers who can't really do traditional collective bargaining, even if somehow you could overcome the employer resistance. They're irrelevant. We're where the action is. Well, over the years, there's come to be a sort of process of mutual appreciation of the strengths and weaknesses of each model, and kind of beginnings of, a courtship. I was going to say a marriage, but it's not really a marriage. It's more like a courtship of, exploring partnerships of various kinds. The fast food one we've already mentioned. There are others. The Taxi Workers Association, which started in New York and is now a national entity. Taxi workers in New York, taxi drivers, are independent contractors, meaning 1099 employees, so to speak. They're not considered employees, therefore have no rights under the Labor Relations Act, such as it is. So they can't organize in conventional unions. But that group has been extremely successful. It's also headed by a woman of color, actually, South Asian. Who's an amazing woman, even though all the drivers pretty much are men. Not quite all, but the vast majority. They've actually had a couple of strikes. They've been extremely successful. Well, they've been given a charter by the AFL-CIO, so that's another example of this kind of partnership.
But what kind of things have their strikes won?
They have won some things. They've won, so what they were able to do is insert themselves, since it's a highly regulated industry, into the negotiations between the Taxi and Limousine Commission in New York City and the fleet owners. And whenever the TLC can raise the taxi cab fares, and what they were able to do is to say, okay, some percentage of that increase in fare is going to go directly to the workers, and most recently, some percentage of it has gone to set up a healthcare fund for the taxi workers, and this was before Obamacare, so now it's maybe less essential. So they've been really quite successful in driving a new model forward. Anyway, that's another example. And I don't know, I think that is the most hopeful thing that's happening. And the fast food is another example of these partnerships between the two. And it's a marriage or a courtship or whatever of resources on the one side and imagination on the other. I hate to say it, but that's really what it's like. So there are exceptions, but in general, the unions don't have a lot of new ideas. This is where the new ideas are coming from. And so in the absence of resources, insofar as the two come together, I don't know, you sort of feel like be fruitful and multiply is the solution to the challenges ahead of us.
So a courtship between old guys and young women. Huh?
Where have you seen this movie before?